Lovely. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here to share a little bit about my practice with TELUS Elevate. So I'm Nina Walker. I'm Associate Professor Learning and Teaching from University of Hertfordshire. But I also work as a Student Experience Lead within the Department of Life and Medical Sciences and work as a Learning and Teaching Specialist, so a bit split across two different departments. I've got a particular interest around transitions with students into, through, and also out of university, but also an interest around building their confidence and scaffolding that confidence within various different skills in the sort of education arena. So I was introduced to TALIS a little while ago and have used it probably in a slightly more unconventional way than maybe some people. So I'm going to take you through a little bit around some of the ways that I've used it. So next slide, please. Thank you. We were joking, we'll be back to COVID briefings with next slide, please. So a little bit about the context of how I've used it. I work predominantly on a first year module, which I've devised, which is entitled Transition to Higher Education. And it's a credit bearing module that scaffolds students in various different skills that they will need within their academic careers, particularly around the academic writing, referencing, numeracy, all sorts of other things, but also introducing them to concepts around professionalism as a future pharmacist. So I have usually around 120, around that sort of figure, students per year within the module. And we have students who've come from a very diverse range of educational backgrounds. So it's not making any assumptions about some of the academic writing skills that they have and building up some of these skills sort of from the ground up. I very much want to focus on providing that foundation and a supportive way of doing that, rather than students being faced with something like an essay festival where they get feedback that knocks confidence. So I have tried to use TALIS in TALIS Elevate to be able to build some of these different aspects. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to look around some of the essay writing, and they've had various lecture series around some of the things that we need to consider, some of the aspects that we need to work with for academic writing, how would we develop it? But for me, the best way for them to do it is to actually put these sorts of things into practice. So could I have the next slide, please? So what I did is I created two different exemplar essays. So deliberately creating one essay with a whole host of errors through it, so that students could then read themselves through the essay, but also then start to pick up based on the learning that they've done previously and apply that knowledge to this exemplar. And then that way they're starting to identify some of the characteristics or the examples of things that they shouldn't be putting into their written work, but also I then created a much better essay, a better quality essay, I suppose you might say, that then they're able to identify the way that that is written and how they can take those sorts of mechanisms forward. So with a group of 120, they were split into two groups of 60. And I know certainly from previous webinars, discussion came up around size with these sorts of things, because the last thing I wanted was one document where people didn't feel that they could comment because there were too many things already. So I split them down into smaller groups. It was the same document, but just uploaded differently to different groups, allocated them to groups, and then they worked together within their groups to be able to identify areas that they felt didn't enhance the academic writing, I suppose, within the essay. So it works incredibly well. Previous years I've done sort of an introductory aspect, but certainly just working through with the students in the first couple of minutes, this is how you do it, a quick demonstration. It's been really, really simple for them to add various different comments. For me, it helps build their confidence, but also their vicarious confidence, really, because they get to see other people's comments coming up. And maybe they don't have the confidence initially to post something, but they can then see someone else has, they can agree with it, they can reply. And the anonymity function here also is crucial, because it engages some of my shyer students, perhaps, rather than raising a hand in class, they're able to post their comments, they're able to add effectively to the discussion that's going on. The other additional aspect is that this then gives me 120 people's worth of thoughts for everyone else to be able to see, so that they can then work through the 6 different essays and see, did someone pick up something else? How would I adapt? And it really helps build their sort of holistic awareness around the academic writing. Could I have the next slide, please? So they work their way through the essay. There's also references associated with the essay. This is one of the key parts that we need around developing their academic writing skills. So they're starting to put these sorts of skills into place as well. And although it's incredibly useful for the students, it's also really useful as a feedback for me to see what they're picking up and what they're not picking up. What sort of areas am I missing with regards to their teaching around these aspects? What can I develop going forward? So it's very much a reactive process to be able to allow me to scaffold their curriculum going forwards. You've probably been able to see on the previous ones and on this one, I've had to blank out quite a lot. And although the anonymity function is used, a lot of the students do use their own name as well. And I think that's quite encouraging for me, for them to be able to demonstrate that they are, they're committing to that comment and they're happy to be visible within that setting. The other thing that I've added is a marking scheme that would go with the essay, and then asking them to work their way through that marking scheme to say, actually, what do you think you would give this particular essay? And I don't know how other people feel about it. We always have marking criteria available. Quite how much students engage with this, it is perhaps more limited than the production of their own work. So this helps to visualize the marking criteria to them, get them to engage with it within this setting, so that when they then move on to their own essays later within the module, then it helps to develop this. So and just onto my last slide, so I don't run over time. The predominant amount of work I've done with TALIS Elevate is around that essay writing skills. As I said, not necessarily linked to reading and things. It's used it in a slightly different aspect. But I've also used it with exploring our standards that we have as pharmacy professionals. So we're regulated by a number of different standards. They're exceptionally important, but they can be quite dry to teach about. So what we have is examples of things like fitness to practice. So examples of maybe where a scenario someone hasn't behaved in a particularly professional manner. So then I can use Elevate within that setting to get the students to read through the set scenario, and then start to identify which of my standards that I'm expecting pharmacy professionals to meet have they breached, which of these has been maintained, and it really helps to allow them to engage with those standards that are essential to their profession, but in a slightly more exciting way, I suppose. The last thing I just wanted to note is I've used it also within a glossary setting. So we have maybe about 40% of our students that don't speak English as a first language, but also anyone coming into a health related discipline doesn't necessarily have the technical jargon and lingo that goes with it. So although the two examples I've spoken about happen in a synchronous manner, I've also used it asynchronously with creating a glossary of terms. So what sort of medical terminology might we come across within the course, so that students can then contribute to this within their own time, which works equally well. So, and I think that's mine. So thank you very much.